My name's Lena. I'm 32, a freelance photographer who spent most of my life chasing light through a lens, trying to capture something real. This story? It's about the day I walked into my brother Marcus's wedding, thinking maybe, just maybe, I could finally belong. Marcus is 35, a hotshot businessman with a corner office and a swagger that screams success. Growing up, he was the golden child, my parents' pride and joy. Me? I was the odd one out, the artsy kid who didn't fit their mold. But I'd hoped this wedding might be different. Spoiler, it wasn't. The venue was this ritzy hotel in New York, all sleek marble and golden chandeliers, the kind of place that makes you feel small if you're not dressed in a tux or dripping in diamonds. I'd picked out a simple red dress, not too flashy, just enough to blend in. I wasn't there to steal the spotlight. I just wanted to be part of the family for once. Marcus was marrying Claire, this sweet 28-year-old who seemed too good for him. If my parents, Richard and Diane, had been buzzing about this day for months. Marcus is settling down, they'd say, beaming. He's really made something of himself. Meanwhile, I'd get a pat on the shoulder and a, "How's that photography thing going?" like it was a hobby I'd outgrow. I've always known they favored him. It wasn't subtle. When Marcus graduated college, they threw him a party with half the neighborhood invited. When I landed my first big photography gig, I got a "that's nice, honey" over dinner before the conversation swung back to Marcus's latest deal. I'd gotten used to it, or so I thought, but walking into that hotel, clutching my little purse, I felt this tiny flicker of hope. Maybe this time they'd see me. Maybe this time I'd matter. The lobby was alive with chatter and clinking glasses. Guests in tailored suits and glittering gowns milled around, sipping champagne like it was water. I spotted my mom, Diane, fussing over Marcus near the entrance. He looked sharp in his tux, grinning like he owned the place, which, in a way, he did. My dad, Richard, was nearby, shaking hands with some guy in a Rolex, probably one of Marcus's business buddies. I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath, and headed toward them. "Hey, Mom," I said, forcing a smile. She glanced at me, her eyes flicking over my outfit like she was sizing me up. "Oh, Lena, you're here," she said, distracted, before turning back to Marcus. "Sweetie, your tie's a little off. Let me fix it." Marcus smirked at me over her shoulder, that same smug look he'd worn since we were kids. "Hey, sis," he said, his tone dripping with mock surprise. "Didn't think you'd show." I swallowed the sting. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Dad gave me a quick nod, barely breaking his conversation. "Same old song and dance." I stood there for a second, watching them orbit Marcus like he was the sun and I was just some stray asteroid drifting too far out to matter. That's when I started to feel it. This gnawing sense that something was off. Not just the usual family crap, but something deeper. I brushed it off, though. I was here for Marcus's big day, not to stir up drama. At least, that's what I told myself. But as I made my way into the main hall, that flicker of hope started to dim. I had no idea what was coming, or how one little detail would flip everything upside down. The main hall was a sight to behold. Tables draped in white linen, floral centerpieces that probably cost more than my rent, and a dance floor gleaming under the soft glow of chandeliers. Guests were already settling in, their laughter bouncing off the walls. I clutched my purse a little tighter, scanning the room for my spot. I wasn't expecting to sit up front with Marcus and Claire. God knows I'm not that delusional. But I figured I'd at least be with the family, maybe near Mom and Dad. That's how weddings work, right? Family sticks together. I found the check-in table near the entrance, where a young woman in a crisp black uniform was handing out place cards. She flashed me a polite smile as I approached. "Name?" she asked, her voice chipper. "Lena Carter," I said, trying to sound confident. Her fingers flipped through a stack of cards, and I caught a glimpse of the seating chart behind her. Names in elegant cursive, rows of tables mapped out like a battlefield. She paused, frowned, then pulled out a card. "Here you go," she said, handing it to me with a quick glance that felt off, like she knew something I didn't. I looked down at the card. Lena Carter, table 19. My stomach did a little flip. 19? That didn't sound right. The family tables were always up front, single digits, close to the action. I turned to the seating chart, my eyes darting over the names. There they were, Richard and Diane Carter, table 2, right next to Marcus and Claire, aunts, uncles, cousins, all clustered nearby. Even Marcus's old college roommate had a better spot than me. I scanned further, and there it was. Table 19, tucked in the back corner, practically hugging the emergency exit, not even in the main circle of tables. It was like they'd stuck me in no man's land. I stood there, card in hand, feeling the heat creep up my neck. This had to be a mistake. I mean, I'm his sister, his only sister. I turned back to the woman. Excuse me," I said, keeping my tone light. "This says table 19. That's not with the family, is it?" Her smile tightened, and she didn't meet my eyes. "That's your assigned seat," she said, clipped and final, like she'd rehearsed it. "If there's an issue, you'll have to talk to the planner." She nodded toward a woman in a headset bustling across the room before I could even respond. My chest tightened. An issue? This wasn't an issue. This was a slap in the face. But I wasn't about to make a scene in front of a stranger. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and headed toward Mom. She was still hovering near Marcus, adjusting his boutonniere like he was a kid going to prom. "Mom," I said, holding up the card, "can I talk to you for a sec?" She sighed, barely glancing at me. "Lena, we're a little busy here. What is it?" "My seat," I said, keeping my voice low. "It's at table 19, in the back, near the exit." She finally looked at me, her lips pursing like I'd just asked something ridiculous. "Oh, Lena, don't make a fuss. We had to prioritize. You know how it is with weddings. Marcus wanted his close circle up front." I blinked. "Close circle? I'm his sister." She waved a hand, dismissive. "You're here, aren't you? Just sit where they put you. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal? The words burned in my throat. I turned to Marcus, who'd been half listening while sipping a glass of whiskey. He caught my eye and grinned, that same cocky grin I'd hated since we were teens. "What's wrong, sis? Not happy with the cheap seats?" he said, loud enough for a few nearby guests to chuckle. "Maybe if you'd climbed the ladder like me, you'd be up here with the VIPs. My jaw clenched. He was enjoying this, rubbing it in, like always. I looked back at Mom, waiting for her to say something, anything to shut him down, but she just shrugged, turning back to him. "Marcus, honey, don't tease her. Lena, go sit down. We've got enough to handle." That was it. No explanation, no apology, just a brush off like I was some distant cousin they'd invited out of pity. I stood there, the card crumpling slightly in my grip. The room buzzed around me, people laughing, glasses clinking, a toast starting somewhere near the front, and there I was, stuck on the outside, literally and figuratively. My whole life I'd swallowed this kind of crap from them. Marcus getting the praise, the attention, while I got scraps. But this was different. This wasn't just neglect, this was deliberate. They'd put me in the back corner to remind me where I stood, nowhere that mattered. I glanced at table 19, one sad little chair squeezed between a wall and a fire exit, half hidden by a potted plant. I could have sat there, kept my head down, played the good little sister, but something snapped. I wasn't going to let them shove me aside, not this time. I set the card down on the nearest table, my hands shaking, and started walking, not toward the back, but toward the door. I stood just outside the main hall, the hum of the wedding fading behind me as the heavy doors swung shut. My heels clicked against the polished floor of the lobby, each step echoing louder than the last. I didn't know where I was going, not exactly, but I knew I couldn't stay. That table in the back, that little card with my name on it, it wasn't just a seat assignment, it was a message, loud and clear. You don't belong here. And for once, I wasn't going to argue with it. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest as I stopped near a tall window overlooking the courtyard. Through the glass, I could see the glow of string lights, the faint outline of guests milling around outside, oblivious to the storm brewing in me. I pressed a hand against the cool pane, trying to steady myself. My whole life, I'd bent over backwards to fit into this family. When Marcus got a car for his 16th birthday, I smiled and said I didn't mind riding my bike. When they framed his business school diploma on the living room wall and tossed mine in a drawer, I told myself it didn't matter. I'd spent years swallowing the hurt, convincing myself that if I just tried harder, they'd see me. But standing there, in that stupid red dress I'd picked out so carefully, I realized something. They never would. I could still hear the faint clatter of silverware, the murmur of voices from the hall. They were probably toasting Marcus by now. Mom fussing over his tie, Dad nodding along like he'd raised a king. And me? I'd be forgotten until someone noticed my empty chair, if they even bothered to look. My fingers tightened around my purse strap. I wanted to scream, to march back in there and flip that damn table 19 over just to see their faces. But what would that get me? A few gasps, maybe a lecture from Mom about ruining Marcus's day. No, I was done playing their game. I turned away from the window, my eyes stinging, and started toward the exit. That's when I heard it. Soft voices drifting from a side corridor just out of sight. I froze, recognizing one of them instantly, Claire, the bride. She sounded upset, her words sharp but hushed. I don't know, Mom, he's been acting weird all week, sneaking off to take calls, dodging questions. I thought it was just nerves, but her voice trailed off, and another woman replied. Older, steadier. I've noticed it too, sweetheart. Something's not right with that boy. I edged closer, peering around the corner. It was Evelyn, Claire's mom, her arms crossed, her face tight with worry. My heart thudded. Marcus? Acting weird? I almost laughed. He'd always been a pro at hiding things, charming his way out of trouble, flashing that grin to make you forget whatever he'd done. But this wasn't my business. I had my own mess to deal with. I took a step back, ready to keep walking, when Evelyn's next words stopped me cold. I've got a bad feeling, Claire. I've seen men like him before. We need to keep an eye on him tonight. Claire sighed, her voice small. I just want to believe he loves me, Mom. I stood there, rooted to the spot. Part of me wanted to barge in, tell Claire she deserved better than my snake of a brother. But what did I know? Maybe it was just wedding jitters. Maybe I was projecting my own crap onto them. Either way, it wasn't my fight. I shook my head, forcing my feet to move. The double doors to the outside were right ahead, promising fresh air and freedom. I pushed through them, the cool night hitting my face like a splash of water. The courtyard was quiet, just the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the city. I leaned against a stone bench, letting the breeze calm the chaos in my head. I'd walked out. I'd actually done it. No tears, no big scene, just me, choosing myself for once. My phone buzzed in my purse, probably Mom, wondering where I'd gone. I didn't check it. Let them figure it out. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something like relief. But as I stood there, catching my breath, I couldn't shake what I'd overheard. Marcus, hiding something. Evelyn's suspicion. Claire's doubt. It nagged at me, a loose thread I didn't want to pull. Not yet. I straightened up, brushing my hair back, and started toward the parking lot. Whatever was going on in there, it wasn't my problem anymore. Or so I thought. I didn't make it far. I'd barely reached the edge of the courtyard, my keys jingling in my hand, when I realized I'd left my jacket inside. It was this old leather thing, worn, beat up, but mine. I couldn't just leave it behind, not after everything else they'd taken from me tonight. So I turned back, cursing under my breath, and slipped through the doors again. The lobby was still buzzing, but quieter now, like the party had settled into a rhythm. I kept my head down, weaving through clusters of guests, hoping no one would notice me sneaking back in. The coat check was near the main hall, and as I rounded the corner, I saw Claire again. She was alone this time, standing by a tall vase of lilies, her white dress glowing under the lights. She didn't look like a bride, more like someone who'd just gotten bad news. Her arms were wrapped around herself, and her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. I froze, debating whether to keep walking, but then she looked up, caught my gaze, and gave me this weak, shaky smile. "Lena, right?" she said, her voice soft. I nodded, surprised she even knew my name. "Yeah, you okay?" I asked, stepping closer. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Not really. I saw you leave earlier. You looked upset." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't thought anyone noticed or cared. "Yeah, well," I said, shrugging. "Family stuff, you know how it goes." She laughed, but it was bitter, hollow. "Oh, I'm starting to." Before I could ask what she meant, the hall doors swung open and Evelyn strode out, her heels clicking with purpose. She spotted Claire and me, her expression darkening. "There you are," she said to Claire, then glanced at me, sizing me up. "You're Marcus's sister, aren't you?" I nodded, feeling a knot twist in my stomach. "Lena," I said. Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. "Good. You might want to hear this too." She didn't wait for a reply, just grabbed Claire's arm and steered us toward a small side room off the lobby. It was one of those private lounges, plush chairs, dim lighting, the kind of place people go to escape the noise. Evelyn shut the door behind us, and the sudden quiet felt heavy, like the air was holding its breath. Claire sank into a chair, her hands trembling. I stayed standing, my arms crossed, not sure what I'd stumbled into. "Mom, what's going on?" Claire asked, her voice cracking. Evelyn pulled out her phone, her fingers moving fast as she scrolled. I didn't want to do this here," she said, "but I can't let it wait." She handed the phone to Claire. "Read these." Claire took it, her eyes scanning the screen. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. What is this?" she whispered. I leaned over, catching a glimpse. Texts, dozens of them, timestamps stretching back months. Marcus's name was all over them. "He's been talking to someone," Evelyn said, her voice low and sharp. Some woman named Vanessa. Late night calls, secret meetups. I had a friend dig into it. Don't ask how. But it's not just an affair, Claire. He's been planning something worse. Claire's head snapped up. Worse? Evelyn nodded, taking the phone back and pulling up another file. This. A contract. He had it drawn up last week. Some legal loophole to get his hands on your trust fund after the wedding. He was going to marry you, wait a year, then file for divorce and walk away with half your family's money. My jaw dropped. I knew Marcus was a jerk. God, I'd lived with it my whole life. But this was next level. Claire stared at Evelyn, her breath hitching. No, he wouldn't. But her voice faltered, like she didn't believe herself. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. He would, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. They both turned to me, startled. I'm sorry, Claire, but that's who he is. He's always been about winning, no matter who he screws over. I just didn't think he'd stoop this low. Claire's eyes filled with tears, and she pressed a hand to her mouth. Evelyn put a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. There's more, she said, her tone grim. I found a recording. Him bragging to this Vanessa chick about how easy it'd be to play the doting husband until he got what he wanted. I've got it all here. She tapped her phone. He didn't just betray you, Claire. He betrayed everyone in that room. I felt sick. All those years of Marcus strutting around, acting like he was untouchable. It wasn't just arrogance. It was a mask. And now it was slipping. Claire stood up, shaky but resolute. I need to see him, she said. Now. Evelyn nodded. We'll do it together. Lena, you coming? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to run, to leave this whole mess behind. But another part, the part that had been shoved aside my whole life, wanted to watch him fall. Yeah, I said. I'm in. We stepped back into the hall, the three of us moving like a quiet storm. The party was in full swing. Laughter, music, the clatter of plates. Marcus was near the head table, holding court, glass in hand, grinning like he'd already won. Claire marched straight for him, Evelyn right behind her. I hung back a little, my heart pounding. I didn't know exactly what was about to happen, but I could feel it. The cracks in his perfect little world were spreading, and there was no patching them up now. He saw Claire coming and flashed that charming smile. Hey, babe, where've you been? He said, all smooth and casual. She didn't smile back. We need to talk, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. His grin faltered, just for a second. What's wrong? He asked, glancing at Evelyn, then at me. His eyes narrowed when they landed on me. What's she doing here? Claire held up Evelyn's phone, the screen glowing with his secrets. Explain this, Marcus. The room didn't go silent, not yet, but I swear I could feel the shift. Guests nearby started to turn, sensing something was off. Marcus laughed, but it was forced, nervous. What's that supposed to be? Some kind of joke? Evelyn stepped forward, her voice cold as ice. No joke, Marcus. We know everything. His face changed then, panic flickering behind the bravado, and for the first time in my life, I saw my brother look scared. The air in the hall thickened as Claire held that phone up, her hand trembling, but her voice steady. Marcus's eyes darted from her to Evelyn, then back to me, like he was trying to figure out who to charm first. The chatter around us started to die down, heads turning, whispers spreading. He forced another laugh, louder this time, trying to play it off. Come on, Claire, what's this? You're gonna ruin the vibe over some stupid prank? He reached for her arm, but she yanked it back, stepping closer to him instead. "It's not a prank," she said, her words sharp enough to cut glass. "It's you, texting some woman named Vanessa, planning to ditch me after you get my money. I've seen it all, Marcus." His face froze. That fake grin stuck like it didn't know where to go. The guests nearby went quiet, leaning in, catching every word. I saw Mom and Dad at the head table, craning their necks, confusion creeping onto their faces. Marcus straightened up, smoothing his tux like it'd save him. "Babe, you're overreacting. Someone's messing with you. Probably her," he said, jabbing a finger at me. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I didn't flinch. "Don't drag me into this," I said, stepping forward. "This is your mess." His eyes narrowed, that familiar sneer twisting his lips. "Oh, please, Lena, you've been waiting for this, haven't you? Little Miss Victim, always jealous of me." I almost laughed. Jealous? Of him? But before I could fire back, Evelyn cut in, her voice like a whip. "Enough. This isn't about Lena, it's about you, Marcus. And this—" She snatched the phone from Claire and tapped it, turning up the volume. A recording started playing, his voice unmistakable, smug as ever. "Claire's loaded, man. I just gotta play house for a bit, cash out, and I'm set. Vanessa's the real deal. She gets me." The words echoed through the hall, bouncing off the walls. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman near me dropped her fork and it clattered loud enough to make me jump. Marcus's face went white, then red, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. That's not me," he stammered. "Someone faked it." Claire stared at him, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Stop lying," she said, her voice breaking. "Just stop." She grabbed the hem of her veil and ripped it off, letting it fall to the floor. "You think I'm some idiot you can use? You're disgusting." The room was dead silent now, every eye locked on them. I saw Mom stand up, her hand pressed to her chest, whispering, "Marcus? What's going on?" Dad just sat there, his face blank like he couldn't process it. Evelyn wasn't done. She pulled out a stack of papers from her purse, printouts, emails, that contract she'd mentioned. "Here's the proof," she said, holding them up. "Signed by you, Marcus, dated last week. You hired a lawyer to lock down Claire's trust fund, thought you'd be slick about it, but you're not as smart as you think." She tossed the papers onto the table and they scattered like confetti. A few guests leaned over, snatching them up, murmuring as they read. Marcus lunged for the papers, his hands shaking. "This is bullshit, you're setting me up." But no one was buying it. Claire's dad, a big guy in a gray suit, stood up from table 3, his face thunderous. "You little punk," he growled, starting toward Marcus. Evelyn held up a hand, stopping him. "Not yet, George. Let him dig his hole deeper." I couldn't look away. Marcus was unraveling, sweat beading on his forehead, his tie crooked now. He turned to Mom, desperate. "Mom, tell them I wouldn't do this." She hesitated, her eyes darting between him and the papers. "Marcus, honey," she started, her voice wobbly. "Just explain it." "There's got to be a mistake." But her tone wasn't convincing. She was grasping, and he knew it. Then Dad spoke, and it was like a bomb went off. "Enough, Diane," he said, standing up slow, his voice low but heavy. "I've let this go on too long." He looked at Marcus, his eyes hard. "I've been covering for you since you were a kid. Your lies, your schemes. Thought you'd grow out of it. But this?" He gestured at Claire, at the papers. "This is who you are, and I'm done." The room sucked in a collective breath. Marcus staggered back, like Dad's words had physically hit him. "Dad, you can't—" he started, but Dad cut him off. I can, and I am. You're not my son tonight. I felt my knees go weak. Dad had never stood up to Marcus. Never. He'd always been the quiet one, letting Mom smooth things over, but now he was drawing a line and Marcus was on the wrong side of it. Claire turned to Evelyn, her voice raw. I'm done. This wedding's off. She grabbed a glass of champagne from the table and dumped it over Marcus's head. It splashed down his tux, soaking him, dripping onto the floor. A few people gasped. Someone laughed. Marcus stood there, drenched, his fists clenched, fury boiling in his eyes. You're gonna regret this, he spat, glaring at Claire, then Evelyn, then me. Oh, of you. No, Marcus, Clara said, stepping back. You are. She tore off her engagement ring and threw it at his feet. It bounced across the floor, a tiny, glittering symbol of everything he'd lost. The crowd erupted, whispers turning to shouts, guests crowding around, some snapping pictures. Marcus tried to push through them, yelling, "This isn't over!" But it was. I could see it in the way his shoulders slumped, the way his voice cracked. He'd built his whole life on sand, and it was washing away. Mum rushed to his side, grabbing his arm. "Sweetie, we'll fix this," she said, her voice frantic. "It's just a misunderstanding." But he shook her off, storming toward the exit, shoving past people. I watched him go, my heart pounding. I should have felt triumph, maybe even relief, but all I felt was this hollow ache. He was a monster, sure, but he was still my brother, or at least he had been. Claire sank into a chair, Evelyn kneeling beside her, murmuring something I couldn't hear. Dad walked over to me, his face tired, older than I'd ever seen it. "Lena," he said, his voice soft. "I'm sorry. For all of it." I didn't know what to say. Sorry didn't erase years of being invisible, but before I could respond, Evelyn stood up, her eyes locking on mine. "You should stick around," she said. "There's more you need to know." I frowned. "More?" She nodded, her expression unreadable. "About you. And this family." My stomach dropped. What the hell did that mean? Marcus was gone, the wedding was in ruins, and now this? I wanted to bolt, to get out of there and never look back, but something in her voice, something heavy, certain, kept me rooted. Whatever was coming, I had a feeling it'd change everything. The hall was chaos, guests buzzing like bees, some still snapping photos of the mess Marcus left behind, others crowding around Claire and Evelyn. I stood off to the side, my arms crossed, trying to process what had just happened. Marcus's soaked tuck, Claire's ring hitting the floor, Dad's voice cutting through years of silence. It all swirled in my head, loud and messy. I should have felt something. Anger, maybe, satisfaction, but I just felt numb. Like I'd been holding my breath too long and didn't know how to let it out. Evelyn's words hung in the air. "There's more you need to know." I looked at her, her sharp eyes pinning me in place. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. She didn't answer right away, just nodded toward the side room we'd been in before. "Not here," she said. "Come with me." Claire was still sitting, her face buried in her hands, so it was just me following Evelyn, my pulse hammering in my ear. Dad trailed behind us, his steps slow, like he was carrying something heavy. We slipped back into the lounge, the door clicking shut, muffling the noise outside. Evelyn leaned against a chair, folding her arms. "You deserve the truth, Lena," she said. "And it's not my place to tell it, but he's been quiet long enough." She jerked her head toward Dad. I turned to him, frowning. "What's she talking about?" He wouldn't look at me at first. His hands were in his pockets, his shoulders hunched. Then he took a deep breath, like he was steeling himself, and finally met my eyes. "You're not ours," he said, the words dropping like stones. "Not by blood." My brain stalled. I heard him, but it didn't click. "What?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. He swallowed hard, his jaw tight. "You're not my daughter, Lena. Not biologically. Diane and I, we took you in when you were a baby. Your real mom was a friend of mine, someone I worked with years ago. She couldn't keep you." The room tilted. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself, my knuckles white. "What the hell are you saying?" I asked, louder now. "You're telling me I'm adopted after 32 years? He nodded, his face crumpling. "We didn't want you to know. Thought it'd be easier that way, for you, for us. But it wasn't right. And tonight, seeing what Marcus did, how we let him walk all over you, I couldn't keep it in anymore." I laughed, but it came out harsh, jagged. "Easier? You think shoving me in the back corner my whole life was easier? Letting Marcus treat me like dirt because I wasn't really yours?" My voice cracked, and I hated it. Dad flinched, stepping closer. "No, Lena, it wasn't like that. We loved you. We do. But Marcus, he was ours, and we got it wrong. We poured everything into him, and we left you out. I see that now." Evelyn watched us, her expression softening just a fraction. "I found out a while back," she said. "Old records, some digging when I started suspecting Marcus. I didn't know how to tell you, or if I even should. But after tonight, you had to know why they treated you that way. It's not an excuse, but it's the reason." My head was spinning. All those years, the cold shoulders, the half-hearted praise, the way Mom always lit up for Marcus and barely noticed me. It wasn't just favoritism. It was this: I wasn't theirs. I never had been. I sank into a chair, my legs giving out. "Why now?" I asked, staring at Dad. "Why tell me this in the middle of all this?" He sat across from me, his hands clasped tight. "Because I'm ashamed, Lena. Ashamed of what we did to you. Ashamed of what Marcus became because we let him. You didn't deserve any of it, and I couldn't let you walk away thinking you were the problem." His voice broke, and for the first time in my life, I saw tears in his eyes. "You're better than us. You always have been." I didn't know what to feel. Anger, sure, that was easy. But there was something else, something quieter. Relief, maybe. All those years wondering why I didn't fit, why I wasn't enough. It wasn't me. It was them. Their lie, their choice. I stood up, my hands shaking. "I need air," I said, brushing past them. Neither of them stopped me. I stepped back into the lobby, the truth sinking in like a weight I didn't know how to carry. Marcus was gone. The wedding was dead. And now this. I wasn't even a Carter. Not really. But as I pushed through the doors into the night, something shifted. If I didn't belong to them, maybe I never had to. I didn't go back inside after that. The night air hit me hard as I stepped out of the hotel, sharp and cold, slicing through the fog in my head. My heels clicked against the pavement as I crossed the courtyard, heading for my car. I could still hear the muffled chaos from the hall. Shouts, whispers, the clatter of a party falling apart, but it felt distant, like it belonged to someone else's life. Maybe it did now. I wasn't sure who I was anymore, not after what Dad said. But I knew one thing. I wasn't staying to pick up their pieces. I drove home that night, the city lights blurring past me. My apartment was quiet when I got there, just me, a few unpacked boxes, and the hum of the fridge. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my purse on the counter, and stood in the middle of the living room, staring at nothing. Adopted, not theirs. The words kept looping in my mind, heavy but strangely freeing. All those years I'd spent chasing their approval, trying to squeeze into a family that never made room for me. It wasn't my fault. It was never about me not being enough. It was about them, their guilt, their secrets. A month passed before I really felt the weight lift. I packed up my camera gear, my clothes, everything I could fit in my car, and left New York. I didn't tell them where I was going, just sent a text to Mom saying I needed space. She'd called a dozen times after the wedding, leaving voicemails I didn't listen to. "Lena, honey, we need to talk," she'd say, her voice all shaky and soft, like she could fix this with a hug and a cup of tea. Dad tried too, once, a quiet, "I'm sorry," that cut off before he could say more. I didn't call back. What was there to say? They'd had 32 years to tell me the truth, and they chose a wrecked wedding instead. I landed in Seattle, new city, new air, new me. I rented a little studio downtown, just big enough for a bed and my gear. The first week, I walked along the waterfront, snapping shots of the ferries cutting through the gray water, the mountains peeking out behind the clouds. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I started taking jobs again, small ones at first, headshots and local events, then bigger stuff, like a gallery shoot for an artist downtown. For the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for Marcus to swoop in and steal the spotlight. He wasn't there. None of them were. Marcus disappeared after that night. I heard through a cousin that he'd left town, probably licking his wounds somewhere, trying to spin a new story to save face. Claire was better off without him, and I hoped she knew it. Mom kept texting little updates about her garden or Dad's golf game like nothing had happened. I'd read them sometimes late at night, but I never replied. Then one evening she called again. I let it ring twice before picking up, more out of curiosity than anything else. "Lena," she said, her voice small, "I know I've made mistakes. I don't know how to fix this." I leaned against my window, watching the rain streak down the glass. "You don't fix it, Mom," I said, keeping it simple. "You live with it." She went quiet, then let out a shaky breath. "I just want you to know I love you," she murmured, and the line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, waiting to feel something. Anger, sadness, maybe even forgiveness, but it didn't come. I set the phone down and went back to editing photos. That was it, the last tether snapping. I didn't need their love anymore, not the way I used to. I'd spent so long begging for a seat at their table, thinking it'd prove I belonged. But here's the thing, I didn't need their table. I could build my own. Seattle wasn't perfect. Rainy days outnumbered the sunny ones, and I burned my toast more mornings than not, but it was a start. A real one. Looking back, that wedding was the end of something old and the beginning of something new. Marcus lost everything, his bride, his scam, his crown. I lost a family I never really had, but I gained something better, myself. I'm not saying it's easy, walking away from people you've known your whole life, even if they hurt you. It's messy, it's lonely sometimes, but it's worth it when you realize staying would have cost you more. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to leave something behind, someone, somewhere, to find your own peace? Maybe it was a job, a friend, a family. Like mine. Maybe you're still figuring out if you can. I get it. I've been there, but if I've learned anything, it's this. You don't have to stay where you're not wanted. You can walk away, head high, and build something better. I did. And I'm still here, figuring it out, one photo at a time.